Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Post Frame Podcast. In this 4-part series, we're going to be covering why post frame construction is a smart choice for commercial buildings. Okay, Blair, benefit number 3, cost efficiency in commercial post frame.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, let's get specific with
You
it.
got to get specific. Right. So how does that differ from, say, like steel frame?
There is definitely a cost advantage. It may not be obvious just right on the onset between post frame and stick frame and steel frame, but there's a few factors in all of those that come to bear that, depending on the decisions you make, your post frame structure for a commercial building could absolutely be more cost effective. So let's talk about the first one. The first and probably the biggest one is foundation systems. If we think about stick frame, meaning you have a continuous stud frame wall that is your framing, where it's the structure of your walls, that has to be put on a foundation wall, right? A continuous foundation wall that's going 4 feet in the ground, something to that effect, right? You know, those bottom plates for a stud frame wall can't just be out in no man's land, right? They got to be on some sort of continuous foundation. Post frame, you can use the columns, right? Those wood columns could transition to perma columns, right, or something different, but you can utilize the column of your post frame building down into the ground as your foundation. You don't have to have a foundation wall. Some places require it. Sometimes that's code for the local jurisdiction you're at, right? Could be the case, but from a kind of back to benefit one, flexibility of design, you can have a different foundation system in post frame. Steel frame, if you remember, their columns are generally 20-25 feet on center. You're going to have a massive kind of square pier system that column has to sit on. And then generally in between those piers that those columns sit on is a continuous foundation wall. Back to post frame, you can utilize just a column going in the column itself, right? Okay. Either treated wood, or you upgrade that to a perma column or a concrete sort of column. But it doesn't have to be a continuous wall. So therein lies some cost savings depending on the decisions you make for your structure and what sort of foundation system you want to have, right? So you have some flexibility there. Another aspect that makes post frame a little more cost effective, primarily compared to steel, is generally with steel buildings, you're going to have a steel building supplier who has designed and developed the materials for you, and then you're going to hire a different contractor to erect it, right? There's going to steel building erectors are generally union contractors, not always, but because steel frame is generally used in commercial settings, right? And if you're anywhere near a fairly large metropolitan area, you're probably most of your steel erector contractors are going to be union. And that just creates a different labor dynamic for what it's going to cost for this building to go up. And that plays into equipment and equipment operators. You may have crane operators. You may have just specific needs around union contractors for that element as well, the equipment element. So in post frame, I don't think I know of any post frame builders of our size or bigger that are union. We're not a union contractor.
And we have our own equipment.
Yep, we
right?
have our own equipment, right? And so
yep.
all of that doesn't apply to us. And therefore, you wouldn't have that difference in what that labor cost is to put your steel frame building up. So I don't know generally what even to ballpark a steel frame building in a per square foot basis. But I've seen in a lot of the commercial structures we do, let's even make it a little bit more specific, like a multi-tenant commercial building, which means, you know, you're maybe 12,000 square feet of the overall building, and it's going to be broken down into maybe 3,000 or 4,000 square foot bays or sections, right? That a business or somebody's going to rent out and have a little office space with a shop space. That's called a multi-tenant space. Our part of that, depending on if we insulate, I mean, there's obviously a range to everything, right? But our part can sometimes be between $30 and $35 a square foot for that 10 to 12,000 square foot building. Steel frame is generally going to be more for those two reasons I talked about, right? Your foundation is just going to be more, the labor, the equipment, all that stuff's just going to be more, you know, maybe with that union factor. But that's a lot of times where we've seen some of those buildings. And then you got to figure out what all the other things that you got to add to that. That's not the totality of it. right? So, those online, don't just go to that one number, right? That's generally for the structure. But you got to think about, right, all your utilities, right? You're going to hook up to city sewer and gas and water and electric, all that stuff, right? What's your parking lot going to be? What's your inside going to be? Your concrete floor, your overhead doors, right? All of those would be subcontracts, right? That would do other parts of the structure. So what FBI would generally provide was that, $30 to $35 a square foot space that I was referencing. So I want to make sure to clarify that,
Okay.
because that number will get
It'll stick,
get
man.
misconstrued or grabbed
You'll
and
see it and
applied to some things that it's not relevant to.
right.
So
Exactly.
hopefully that helps.
Yeah.
In cost effectiveness.
Absolutely. Be sure to stay tuned for the next episode where we're going to talk strength and durability.